How's everybody doing tonight? Tonight will be my 33rd discussion. Tonight I'm speaking with John Howard from the amazing band Moment. He was also in Public and also in Switches. Super nice guy. Every time I ever saw John, he was always super, super nice. Um, I was in love with Moment. Songs for the Self Destructive was by far like I played that thing out crazy. I drove my friends crazy because I wouldn't stop playing it. So I'm just super stoked to talk to him, and I haven't seen him in a long, long time, and it'll be good to catch up with him and see what he's up to. Hope everybody's good. Can't wait for this warm weather to hit. Yeah, it'll be great. Thursday and Friday in the 60s in New England. I've been waiting a long time for this, so. But I hope everybody's good, and John should be joining us fairly soon. Next week, next Sunday, I'll be speaking with Ryan from Dreamwell, and that new album that Dreamwell just dropped a little while ago is phenomenal. If anybody hasn't checked that out, good Rhode Island band, really really good. Um, Other than that, just just chilling. Hope everybody's good though. Oh, my buddy Ron has a. Oh, here's John right now. Hold on.
What's up? What's up?
What's going on, John? How you doing, my friend? I lost you for a second. John's having a little Wi-Fi issue right now. Hopefully, we can. He gets in a better area.
How's it going?
Hey, what's going on? I lost you for a second.
I know that's good. I was gonna see how tough this 5G really is, but it doesn't really work if I'm too far away from the house.
Yeah.
I'm out in the backyard right now.
Oh, you are nice.
Yeah,
Uh, I just wanted to thank you so much for doing this, man. I appreciate you taking the time out. Um, I haven't seen you in a long, long time. I think the last time I saw you was, I think we were both at the plot to blow up the Eiffel Tower in Connecticut, and that was like
oh
2000,
man.
I don't know, four maybe.
Yeah,
That's the
that's so
last time
long
I think
ago.
I
That's
saw
the
you.
year my daughter was born.
I know it's been a long, long time. Lost him again. Hold on. You're back.
I see you. Mm-hmm.
Nice. All right. You're going in and out. We'll get this thing figured out. There you go.
What's up?
So, like I said, thank you for doing this, man. And like I said, it's been a long, long time since I seen you. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I put a picture of me and you. Did you see that picture I put up of me and you at the daughter show? We were like side by side.
Yeah, yeah, man.
That was it. That was a good show. There's so many pictures of my goofy face on those pictures, and um,
I know it's crazy. I always remember like a ton of cameras and video cameras around back then, and then it's rare when I see some of the shit posted.
yeah, I've tried. I like the funny thing about when I videotaped and took pictures and stuff like that. I wish I had taken my camera to more things. You know what I mean? Because I had seen Moment uh, at least 5 times, 6 times back in the day, and instead of like filming, I always just wanted to watch you guys perform. You know what I mean? I remember
Yeah.
especially
I feel
Exit
like that
23 in
even
April.
now
I had a
with like phones nowadays, I kind of feel like that. Like I'm actually more than a lot of people. I'll take my phone out and start filming, but I feel it's still kind of like a weird thing to do. Like some people want to live in the moment and not actually have the phone out. So like I know why people do that, but I also remember a lot of cameras out. But then it's like later trying to track that stuff down is hard. Like I really appreciated actually your account on Instagram because of that. It's like there's just like
I,
stuff uploaded
thank
all
you,
the
man.
time that it's like I haven't even seen that.
Yeah, I've been trying to just like find stuff too and transfer it so that I can find some new stuff too. But like I said, I've lost so many tapes over the years of moving and stuff like that. I wish I had all the stuff that I I recorded. There's some missing stuff that I didn't have, and a couple tapes that just got ruined and just lost from
Oh yeah.
moving and stuff like that. So it's kind of a bummer.
It's always I have a huge trunk
So
that just has old like demo tapes and stuff in it that from back in the day, and that stuff's hard to go through too, man. If something's on tape, it's like by today's standards, it's a tough thing to go through like a random unlabeled blank cassette and try to figure out what's on it because you have to go in real time and like actually listen to every single thing on it, and that's just sometimes the trip down memory lane is like people don't realize on social media it's just like a little quick like like dopamine hit of like, hey, remember this shit, and you're like, yeah, but you can bounce out of it and open another tab whenever you want. But when you put in a cassette tape, you're kind of like trapped for that listen. And I don't know, honestly, man, sometimes it's like too much for me. Like I'll start going down the like back in the day shit, and then I'm like I'm just like tripping out basically, and I'm not gonna get through the whole pile. So I have like a really big, this like this big green trunk with like stickers all over it that just has a bunch of demo tapes and shit. But it's rare, honestly, when I go through it.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I would be. I'd love to see what kind of demo tapes you have in there because there's so much lost stuff that like I'm always searching for and I never find. You probably have some hidden gems in there that no one's
Dude,
heard in a long time.
I trust you to take better care of it. Actually, like if you want to, like, I should probably dig through it and just look at the labels and send you some shit because it's like it's not even being looked at honestly right now. Some of it.
Yeah, that's
But it's all audio. It's all audio, you know, like I don't have any like that's the thing is Instagram's really visual based and I don't save any of those pictures or anything. I don't have any video.
yeah,
So
yeah. So you don't have any old moment videos back in the day?
not really. Like every once in a while somebody uploads it and I'm like, "Oh shit." But I didn't save shit, man.
Yeah.
I was in this band My Magnificent Machine with like Pat O'Day, Don Belcastro from There Were Wires, and this dude Dan Jakes played drums, right? And like Pat O'Day had a lot of stuff recorded. Like he had a lot. Like he would like hand a camera off to someone and be like, when we play, record our set and get people like a girlfriend or a friend or something. And for a while, he had like it pretty well cataloged. Like he was really into cataloging stuff. So even though maybe, you know, it's a different, slightly overlapping but different crowd that would know that band for a moment, but My Magnificent Machine is really well documented.
Yeah.
Like if you just go through Pat O'Day, he has all of it. Like he has every single show we played and who played that show like written in a journal from back then.
Oh, no kidding.
And he has like yeah, so and a couple of times we had some weird shit happen with that. It was like people said they're putting out like you know, used to be able to go to a show and like buy like you know, like a Bane VHS or something like that. You know, like you could just buy live shows that somebody recorded and then like dubbed.
Yep.
And you know, this kid was just saying, I forget who this was actually. I forget who this was, but this was like he told Pat O'Day, he's like, I'm making a compilation of video of all of these bands. And he had already collected, you know, 5 or 6 of the band's videos. And Pat gave him a bunch of stuff, and we like never saw that shit again.
Oh,
It just like disappeared into this dude, like, you know, fucking before phones, man, I used to have like this little address book that was like this thick that had everybody's just like emails and phone numbers and shit.
Yeah, I
And we were
remember
on
I remember
landlines and
doing that.
stuff back then.
I remember like trying to set
So
up
like,
shows and writing people letters and stuff and hoping they would play the
yeah,
show and hoping they would write back to me.
yeah, it used to be like, this one landline in Jamaica Plain with like Rob Crean that was in Ames Curve, right? And then like Joe Coelho that was in Statue Factor and The Foe and stuff like that. And like this one landline in that house was just like three different bands were using it and all these people were using it for personal reasons. Like that was just, it was hard to get a hold of anyone. And it's like if someone called us back, you might not be home. And it's just like, I don't know if anyone took the message or anything. So it was like way harder back then.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I still kind of feel like you said about phones nowadays, and like because I used to like roll with my camcorder all the time, and now like as I'm
yeah,
older, I saw, like I said, I saw Jerome's Dream, a year and a half ago, and it felt weird to take my phone out. You know what I mean? It was like,
I did. Yeah, I went to like a Colin of Arabia show a lot in Jamaica playing a while back too, and it was like that's got to be like a year ago or more. And it was like I felt like definitely felt like a weirdo holding a phone up. Like maybe there were like three or four people holding a phone up, but it was like the majority of people are moshing and
yeah,
don't
yeah,
really want to do that
yeah,
because it's like everything is really thickly documented now. So the like dancing and live aspect of a hardcore show is just kind of like it's like the one time maybe you should put your phone away.
yeah, definitely.
So, but it used to be like maybe nobody really. It was like a lot of people had like the camcorder, but they weren't going to be as dedicated to going and filming stuff, and they weren't always ready. Like, I mean, more than most people, but it's like you had to be like, do I have enough battery power? And nowadays it's like, do I have enough memory on my phone? But it used to be like, do I have enough tapes?
Yeah,
Do I have this? So it's like the kind of person who's like responsible enough to be prepared and they have like the money to have a nice camera. And then also what they want to do with that camera is just record these like obscure screamo bands and shit. It's like that's rare. So I would see the cameras around though. Like that's the thing. There was some shows when there would be like three cameras in the room when the headliner's playing.
yeah.
And I didn't always like, I don't know what happened to all that footage. Like it's just sometimes it's just like sitting in someone's basement right now.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
I don't know where it is.
I know exactly. Those were like some of the problems I went through. Is like if I had to switch a tape mid tape because the tape ran out, or I was looking for wall sockets to plug my camcorder in because my battery was gonna die. Like it was like,
Yeah,
and then I had to like skip some bands that I wanted to record because my battery was so low. So I had to save it for like
yeah.
the headliner. Um,
Especially because it would be like late in the show. Now you already filmed three bands, and so now you're trying to work on, now like the resources are really scarce by the time the headliner's playing. So it would be like the kind of person who had the discipline to be like, I'm saving this for when Orchid plays or something like that. It was like rare.
yeah,
So you see this. It's surprising to me actually for some bands that were like at the time were so popular, and then there's these certain classic YouTubes of like last Orchid show ever or something like that like have a lot of views, but there's actually it's kind of like hard to find some footage where like the sound is good. I was at that show and I can see myself. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's
yeah.
like that's rare. That daughter's picture is like it's come up a bunch of times for me where somebody will tag me in it because it's like a rare one when you can clearly see me. Like
So when I usually talk to people, I usually ask like, what got you into like heavier music, or what age and what kind of drew you to like the underground heavier style of music?
oh man, everything about music for me is always related to Don from There Were Wires because that's just, I mean, seriously, I think sometime in first grade, I started hanging out with him and it was like, it was just like the other like weirdo kid in my grade basically. And it was like every weekend by the time third grade, fourth grade came around, and then we're in middle school, it was like every weekend I would stay at his place for the entire weekend, and then the next weekend he'd stay at my place for the entire weekend. And it was just like, you know, that's my brother. Somebody's trying to call me. Hold on a second. Like, I had a best friend too, and so that was like that was our first band, you know.
Yeah.
So every weekend, even before, so first band was probably when I was like a freshman in high school. So leading up to that point, for those like 3 or 4 years, it was like Dawn's older brother just had like, you know, like Minor Threat and like Metallica tapes and like all of these heavier bands. It was just, you know, just kind of like more obscure stuff to me that I didn't know about. But it's like, in retrospect, it's kind of like mainstream punk stuff you could just buy at the, you know, you could buy like Black Flag or Bad Brains or something like that at just you remember these chains that were like Strawberries CDs or something like
Yeah.
that, you know?
Yeah.
Like you could buy that stuff, but I just like wouldn't have known what to buy. So, and his older brother is a lot older. It's like, I forget the age gap, but Don Belcaster's older brother is like, you know, it's 7 years older or something like that. So it was like this older dude's tape collection that we just delved into all the time. And, you know, I like, my parents wouldn't let me grow my hair long. So that was, at the time, it was like a cool kid in my junior high was either like a football player or they had like a mullet and a jean jacket with like Slayer patches on it and shit.
Yeah.
And I wasn't allowed to dress like that. Like I wanted to dress like that. And my parents were like, you know, if my hair got even a little bit shaggy, my dad was taking me for a haircut. So I was like not really like one of the metalhead kids, which in my town, those metalhead kids were called war pigs. For whatever reason, this was like a clique. Like that's actually a whole other subject that I did figure out the story behind. But basically, it's like, you know, since I wasn't allowed to do that, then I was like, you know, I would see kids at school with like a Metallica shirt or something like that, and I was just like not really totally aware of which band was which. And so the first time I remember just being like, you know, I was actually like, holy shit, I absolutely love this, was just like Metallica for me. So
Yeah. Nice. Now, your dad wanting you to have short hair, was he pushing you into sports back then, or was it just kind of he was like he just didn't want you to kind of look like, you know? Yeah, got you. Did you? Um, so I don't know if you heard my
it
question.
was like, yeah, I understand. Like it was like my dad's motivation for being like, no son of mine's gonna have long
Yeah,
hair type thing. You know
yeah,
what I mean? He's kind of like older for my age range. Like when I went over kids' houses, their parents looked really young to me. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Like my parents are like about 10 years older than some of my friends' parents in my hometown. So, and which is Foxborough. So there was a lot of kids where it's like their parents were just like, you know, maybe slightly out of step with my parents' generation wise,
yeah,
you know? So my parents weren't exactly like the hippie generation. But a lot of my friends, their parents were like the post 60s revolution type people. But my parents were already in college when the 60s revolution was happening. They weren't like as impressionable to it. And for my dad's dad, he's always told me that um like he was starting to like grow his sideburns out like Elvis at one point, and his dad was just like, cut them fucking sideburns. It's just like he wasn't allowed to do this, you know? And it was like, so he saw this as just like normal good parenting, like, which maybe it is. Maybe it's like, you know, because it's like maybe the kids that were like those kind of war pig kids in my town were like smoking cigarettes out behind the school and stuff, you know,
yeah.
like,
Now,
especially back then.
did he push you towards sports? Was he like a sports guy? Did he play sports in high school, and did he kind of try and push you in that direction?
Not really in any sort of like aggressive way, though, but but we definitely always like signed up for sports and stuff like that. But it was more like for, he like bought me a guitar, paid for guitar lessons. He let me and my brother in Don's first band, and actually all through high school, he let us practice in the basement. Like he was really supportive of music, which actually I noticed that that's like despite this sort of like kind of like outsider aspect to punk in general, I noticed that's really common. Like a lot of the bands I like, I noticed that their parents actually were really supportive of them artistically and musically. So
Yeah.
it's like it wasn't like I had this like bad relationship with my dad about it. It was just like I wasn't allowed to really like wear a concert. Like I remember my brother had this Iron Maiden shirt, and he's like 2 years younger than me, and he was like my bass player in my first band and stuff like that. So he like loved this Iron Maiden shirt, and he would find it in the trash. Like my mom was like secretly throwing it away just because it was like this disgusting imagery on it. It was like the Eddie character from Iron Maiden,
Yeah.
and like so like arguably that was an attempt to like keep us out of trouble, which there was trouble. This is like height of the crack epidemic.
Mm.
It's like it was reasonable to be like, oh, I don't want my kid hanging out with these certain people in the town or whatever. So,
Yeah.
but
So what was your first band that you were actually in?
we were called Paladin as this four piece, right? This is like Barry Marino, who he's in a bunch of bands actually. Like, I'll send you a list of some of those bands later. But Barry Marino is like was our first drummer, and then my brother's my bass player, and Don Belcastro was the guitar player. Well, like other people played with us sometimes too, because that was just like from the kids we knew from high school, from junior high school at this point, right?
Yeah.
And we were just like, you know, Metallica covers, and what's what's popular at the time, it was like Face No More covers and stuff like this, right? So when we started to write our own songs, we changed the name to FHS. And FHS was like, if we wanted to, because Foxborough is a very conservative, like white bread town, especially at the time. So, and some other parents maybe were in a similar boat, because it's like if you wanted to keep your kid out of trouble and it was like all of a sudden being like this really bad drug problem, we were, a lot of kids, if it wasn't a school dance and it wasn't like this kind of like, like some kind of church organization doing a dance for the kids, most parents wouldn't let their kids go to something. If it was just like a bunch of rock bands are playing, there's no way
Yeah.
that in the suburbs that you go, right? Like, so if we put FHS on the flyers, then it was just like, it just looked like a school function.
Yeah.
So half the kids we know would now could go. So, because we were real young when we were, like, there was some older dude named Monty Aligarsimi, I remember, who like was setting up shows at this place called the South Foxborough Community Club, the community center. And FHS was all of those people I mentioned, like Barry Marino, Don from There Were Wires, my brother, but then also this dude Chris Sullivan, who is he's actually like a beatbox guy nowadays called Shockwave, that he does this thing in Manhattan called Freestyle Love Supreme. And he's just, he was much more into hip hop. But he was one, and then this other guy, Jared Seabrook, who's like, he's in a lot of different projects like rock or noise or jazz, but he still plays drums now too. And so that was a six-piece band that we had that was FHS. And we would just like, that was basically all the people roughly our age in our town that were like good at music that we wanted to play with, that we thought were cool. So, and that band was writing our own songs. That was the first time I was in a band where we like wrote our own stuff, set up our own shows, played with other bands from, like, that just became my social life in high school. That was like, no, like we would just find some other hometown hero band like a couple towns over and be like, you play in our town, we'll play in your town. And then like that was my social life completely. Like I didn't really hang out with anyone from my school from that point forward,
Yeah.
I was just like, that was just like a way to meet people that were just like more interesting or something to me. So It's, but it's really weird because we were really like out. We really didn't like play with bands from the city that much. Like if we had a show at the Living Room in Providence or something, we'd be like, "Oh my God, we're playing the city." But we almost never played in Boston. All through high school, I barely played in Boston. You know.
And it was like the when you were writing your own songs, what was the like sound of it? Like what did you guys sound like?
I can send you actually, yeah, one of my friends, Mike Townsend, told me he has it all digitally. But we used to stay up the night before shows, like dubbing tapes for FHS and like sell them at shows and shit like that. But like, I have a lot of that stuff like analog,
Yeah.
but I didn't really get it digital. But this dude, Mike Townsend, told me he has it, so I'll send you that later. But it was kind of like, because it was all over the place. We'd have like fast punk songs and sort of like, it was kind of like just what our influences were sometimes sort of like a major label band that's like Helmet or something like this. But then also we were trying to be like Black Flag fast punk type of stuff. And then this dude that became Chris Sullivan that became like a beatbox guy later. He was really into hip hop. And that was like a rough one for me. I was actually really outvoted about that, but it's like having hip hop elements, it's tough
Yeah.
to me. At the time though, it was really popular, but it's like tough for me to go back in time and listen to some of those tracks where I'm like, Jesus Christ. And actually I feel that way a lot about that's kind of like about being in bands in general. It's just kind of like this weird like group art project kind of, and a lot of times you're compromising something or just with six members I was getting a sixth of my way,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I was like trying to see what was cool about other people's ideas, but sometimes I was outvoted or something. So that band broke up at some point, and I was actually at a show that was like Game Face and the Get Up Kids downstairs Middle East, and these two guys, which was actually Steve Diaz and I think Tom Moses, but it might have been Matt Spearin, the drummer from Moment. But it was like Steve Diaz and one of the other dudes from Moment. To tell you the truth, I can't remember who the other guy was. But they like approached me because they knew Steve Diaz knew FHS wasn't like playing shows anymore. Like we pretty much were like, there was too many weird shit like that, like doing like rap chord type songs or something where I was like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And so he was like, if he's not in the band, he can sing in our band. And they were called like, Still Life, I think, or something like this, where they had a demo but didn't really play that many shows. And they noticed they were kind of a screamo sound, and they noticed their singer couldn't like hack it at their practices. Like if he screamed for a couple songs, he had to like sit down and was like,
Yeah.
like couldn't really do it. Even though he sounded good to them at first, but then it was like, he can't actually play a show. Like, this is not going to happen. So they just wanted me to try out. But then, so the first early stuff that they showed me with Moment was a screamo band, which was exactly what I wanted to do too. Like, that's how I know you, mostly screamo,
Yeah.
like not, it was like mosh bands, grindcore, screaming, that kind of shit. But with Moment, they just knowing that FHS was very eclectic and like had all these different styles, they were like, hey, we want to show you this other shit we were working on. And it was like, that kind of like major chord progression, like kind of bright sounding pop punky emo shit. And I was like, similar to FHS, to tell you the truth. I was like, I like it. And if you show me some riffs and stuff, I'm like, I want to play what's appropriate over it. But sometimes I was just, I don't know, like honestly, Moment's a really funny one to me because I was probably growing up, I mentioned FHS or My Magnificent Machine, but those are just bands that like played more shows than some of the other ones. But really, I was like, I was just gonna be in bands. I was in like probably like 15 bands or, leading up to that point.
Yeah.
But it's just that Moment was just like very hard working. Like they like booked shows, they showed up to shows all the time. They would like practice twice a week without fail. Like they were just very dedicated to it. So it's like a lot more people would know me from Moment, but it's funny to me because it's just kind of like like I knew by the time I was playing a moment, I knew that it's like if you want to make a band work, you have to like you can't always say like my way or the highway, you know.
Yeah.
But like artistically, you can't say that. But actually, to tell you the truth, I'm pretty sure Moment knows me as sort of like that of like hard to work with or hard ass about that every other aspect because I really am like I don't really want to play in a band where you get up in front of people and then like the band's like missing the cue and falling apart and can't really play the transition and you know like I don't really want to do that. So if it's like I would push them really hard, but actually I probably everyone I played with I probably had that attitude around that time, you know. But actually that's what made me like they were like come and audition for this thing and just after like I saw how tight they were, I was like I just absolutely want to play with these guys. So I didn't really care that wasn't I mean I liked pop punk and stuff at the time, but I really wasn't like that down
Yeah.
with being in that kind of band, honestly.
Yeah.
So like, it was just because they were like they were cool guys. I got along with them, and actually Matt Spearin at the time was just he's such a good drummer. At the time, he was in like grindcore bands and stuff like that. Like I clicked with them even. It wasn't just like oh they're pretty good band. Like I was like oh these guys are cool guys. I will hang out with them again. So I was just down to do whatever, you know. But it's kind of funny to me because that's like I really wasn't seeing myself at the time. Like I saw myself as like a hardcore kid. I was like on straight edge. I was like I probably saw around that time I probably saw Converge like 30 something times, you know. Like from when I first my first Converge show, which I think was at the Rat, until you know my daughter was born, I probably saw Converge like over 30 times. So
Yeah.
I was just that to me that's like one of my all-time favorites. I'm sure everybody is sick of me like talking about Converge because I just think it's so good, right?
Yeah, but I mean,
But it's like and like
who doesn't love Converge that lives around in New England? I don't know one person that's like, nah, I don't really like them that much. Like, I feel like everybody.
it was it's unreal. It's an unreal band to me that it's just like the dream of like that's a funny thing about Converge is like that's their first band where I'm talking about like well my first band was like you know we had some rapcore songs or something like that. And it's like Converges, they have that like weird kind of like alien past where they were just like not sure what they're doing as a band yet and then plowed through that and stayed being a band. Like I just, it was hard. And I actually thought like, you know, a big part of that, even though like FHS is like definitely the reason that FHS didn't stay together. It was starting to be ridiculous where it was like Don from There Were Wires and me and that dude Chris Sullivan would be like ready to play the show, and we didn't drink or smoke or anything, and we would show up on time and be ready and like loading equipment. And the other dude, my brother and Barry Marino and Jared Seabrook would show up like you know like on LSD or something,
Yeah.
and just be like, oh, and like it was just they didn't like seem to appreciate like how hard it was to get that shit booked and like try to do it.
Yeah.
And it was like I just so it's not it was just not even like I don't know. I just and like my you know I told you my how my parents were like worried about if I was gonna get sucked into some rock scene. So it was like really easy to get permission when I was underage to like go play a show or something. I got grounded where I couldn't see the like Metallica, Guns N' Roses, Faith No More tour because I like was sneaking out of my house to play like with my industrial band or something, you know?
Yeah.
Like I was like, and I was like, the reason I could do that is because I was like, I was like actually like I was actually just going to play the show and then a dude's giving me a ride home and I would like go to bed and go to school the next day. So that's why I could do that. It's like if I was just going and getting high and doing all this shit, I would never be able to pull that off. Like
Yeah. It's
even when I was older. So that's the thing is like so many bands, like especially in the city, in the context of like the city, there's so many bands that just like it's kind of like the same way it was like my social scene when I was in high school. There's some bands where that's their social scene in the city, so they're just kind of like hanging out at a bar smoking and like their band's not that good because they're just wasted.
yeah.
They're too drunk to play. They don't sound as good as their demo. You know, it's like so one really reliable thing about Moment. It's kind of like a weird, um, kind of like, it's an acquired taste band, but it's like that it's like really consistent. Like I can honestly say more than anyone else I played with, it's like if somebody listened to the CD and then was like, "Oh, we should book this band," we would show up and sound like exactly like that. That
Yeah.
was like, you know,
Yeah, definitely.
that's
Now,
what
what that was
that's,
like when you first got into Moment? Was that 1999 or was that 2000?
it's. I'm sure it's 98,
Oh,
and then
98.
by the time we were like, it might be 99, and I might be wrong, but it's like there was a little bit of a lead up, maybe 6 months or so, where we didn't play shows yet. And if we did play shows, it might have just been like South Foxborough Community Center, like our own basements and stuff like that, with friends over. So before we started really booking a lot of stuff, there was a little bit of a lead up. So,
Yeah. Yeah,
but
the first thing that
it
I ever
was,
heard was the now did you guys put out a demo? Because the first thing I ever heard was the 7-inch a year ago today. That was the first thing I heard on the Rob Crean Records 7-inch. And
yeah. I mean, so that was, yeah, we put out a CD before that even. So that was a little, it had a lot more like screaming parts and stuff on it. And well, I don't know. A year ago today has some screaming shit on it that I like too. Like I really like those songs too. I don't mean to make it sound like I don't like it, but it's just like they were pushing me to do this style too. I'm sure the things I was into and the things I was pushing for were like compromising for them too. So it just came out that way. But like we had a demo that I like the first CD before a year ago today was like some of the songs I wasn't even in the band when they had those riffs kicking around or even like complete songs but just like no vocals yet.
Yeah.
So that's kind of weird. And then like I'm pretty sure after a year ago today around so we like recorded that 7-inch and I'm pretty sure when we started playing shows a lot more from that point forward because we're like promoting something that so we're like we wanted to sell the 7 inches.
Yeah.
So it's like we're like trying to sell T-shirts and shit now, and it was kind of like we were working a lot harder now. It was like some weird drama with that bass player, and I like that bass player, but it's like he just was like kind of like playing like root note of the guitar part type of guy,
Yeah.
which I don't always think that's bad, but it was like, and also a lot of times he was like, I've been in a lot of bands with people that kind of go this path,
Hmm.
but it's like on the one hand he really had the dream and like wanted to be in a band real bad, but he also like didn't always show up or we'd like write stuff and then it was like the next time we practiced it was obvious he just like hadn't even touched the bass since then.
Yeah.
It was like, but he was really like seemingly passionate in some ways. And so I just had this roommate, Dennis, that was just, we had this cool house in Woburn that I liked. It was like Ryan from There Were Wires, and there was a bunch of people that lived there, but there was this top floor. Like you went up the stairs, and if you went left, it was Dennis's room, and right, it was my room. And I just like clicked with Dennis. Where, for one thing, I get along with Dennis, where we're just like those people who like never go to bed. Like I'll just like never sleep. Everyone else is, I'm always the last man standing anyway. And Dennis is like that. But he wasn't straight edge at all. So that was like, some of my friends didn't really know him, and he was on, we were a lot younger back then, so he had only been in the country for like, less than 10 years at that point. He was from Russia.
Yeah.
So he had like a thick Russian accent, and then he was like much more shy at the time than he is nowadays. So it was like, a lot of people didn't know anything about him. So, but he was just a reliable bass player. And he, like, for one thing, it was like, he's the type of person that he just like you can't tell him what to play. Like he's like, I got it, I'll write my own part, and he just like wants to make it his and like play his own thing.
Yeah.
He just is so into it that it's like you don't have to really guide him that much. He was like 100% down, and he also like had a van. He wanted to be the guy with the van in the band and be like he just was totally taking it more seriously, and that was actually a huge push too. But he just like motivation wise, he clicked with everybody else right away.
Yeah.
Even though he's sort of like not like necessarily in, he wasn't as like innocent of a suburbs kid as everybody else,
Yeah.
despite he's from Martha's Vineyard, you know, which is kind of weird. Martha's Vineyard has like a summer rush, and then there's this weird clique that lives there the rest of the year, you know.
Yeah.
So it's like he sort of had this other thing going on, but as far as like taking the band seriously and being professional, he was like so good to play with. So I don't know, that just so after a year ago today, like from that point forward, that was like Dennis was in the band.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we used to talk about this all the time where we're like, you know, if we didn't want to become a band where it's like we replace members all the time, even though honestly, a lot of bands I like do that.
Yeah.
It's like, that's the thing with Converge. I think they have like two original members, you know.
Yeah.
But once they had Jane Doe, they stayed really consistent. But leading up to that, it would be like, you know, sometimes they had a different bass player or drummer when I saw them, you know.
Yeah. Yep.
But for whatever reason with Moment, we were just like us five. Like we were like, we're not changing the lineup. So ultimately easy to knock over a band when it comes near the end, because it's like all it took is one of us being like, I'm not going to play anymore, and then we're like, shit,
Yeah.
we said we're not, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's very easy to break up at that point, you know. So
Yeah, the early moment stuff, like to me sounds very similar, like to not similar, but like influenced by. I don't know if you agree with this, but like I get like a grade feel to it, like the early stuff with the
yeah,
screaming. Like I feel like that's like
I remember that at like, you know, New Bedford Reflections in New Bedford. I'm sure you remember, but I saw like Hot Water Music and Grade tour there, and that was like, I actually really did. That was a big, that was the type of shit, not necessarily Grade specifically, but I liked that band.
yeah,
But it was like that kind of like, you know, it had it had the sort of like major chord progression pop punk element to it, but also had screaming vocals, very similar to Grade. There was a lot of them around that. Sometimes we'd end up playing shows for whatever reason with Keepsake. I don't even know. There was that honestly, that's another thing about Moment is I didn't always like not to diss Keepsake, but it's like there was a lot of bands that we get booked with
yeah,
because of the sound too, where I was just like, I don't even know, man. It's not my thing. So like I never sit around and listen to the more like late 90s, early 2000s kind of poppy sound
yeah,
emo. Like it's not exactly, there's some gems of that genre, but it's like really some of the like lesser known bands that we get booked with, I just be like, why, man? I don't know this. Like, so honestly, like when it's like Reflections in New Bedford is a good example. It's like there's so many times Moment played there where it was all like grind and screamo bands, you know.
yeah,
It's like Usurp Synapse or something like that, or like, you know, there's a show like north of Boston where it's like, you know, Orchid and Jerome's Dream and Moment was played in like 6 going on 7,
yeah,
you know? It's like a good show to me. But I like that kind of band. Or like, you know, you and me are in that picture at Daughters. It's like one in my hometown I knew, you know, before Daughters is As the Sun Sets. And it's like that same drummer and that same singer, right? It's like it's like near the end sort of As the Sun Sets. I knew if I booked As the Sun Sets at the South Foxborough Community Club, it would be like destroy the venue.
yeah,
You know what I mean? So I just like, because it was like people don't really understand, because like in the city it would just be like, it'd be like Daughters is playing, or as you know, it'd be like kind of like certain like art school kind of hipster kids or something would be there, but there would also be a lot of hardcore kids. But in the earlier days of As the Sun Sets, it was just like a lot of those kinds of kids would go, but then there would be like twice as many kids that were just this sort of like parking lot skateboarder kids from the suburbs that like would never go to the city ever,
yeah,
and they're just like dirt bad kids. Like I just, you know, there'd be like these folding tables set up for merch and stuff like that, and that's like all of that would be broken and destroyed. Chairs would be thrown, stuff like this. And so like I knew this, And like I booked, and so many bands were like wanted to play just because As the Sunsets was, and I booked it at Plainville, which is actually, I believe, where they, at least, I don't remember who in the band, but at least two of the kids in As the Sunset like lived in Plainville,
Yeah.
which is like a town over from Foxborough. And I booked it at like a Knights of Columbus Hall or something like that in Plainville. And it's like, you know, there's so many people there that like the police noticed. I think, in Foxborough, we had to tell the police we were playing and have like a police detail,
Yeah.
or else we couldn't do it. Like even though it's like bands probably nobody's ever heard of nowadays, but back then it was like, my friend John Leonard got like thrown through a window at one of the shows in Foxborough and stuff like that. Like it's like this one band like swung their bass into the lights that were like these fluorescent lights over the people. So like they required us to have a cop,
Yeah.
like in Massachusetts it's like a cop details like minimum 4 hours, and back then it was like $100
Yeah.
to pay the cops for 4 hours, right? And so I knew that I was supposed to do that in Plainville, but I can't, to this day I don't know if I like didn't set the cop up or if I called them and it like, they didn't take it seriously or call me back or something. But it was like one thing led to another, and it's like the night of the show and I had no police detail.
Yeah.
So there was like, once the police noticed there's like 300 kids at this spot that are all like the weirdest kids ever. So it was just, like then, so I was sitting there arguing with the police to be like, allow us to do it. And to tell you the truth, the police started to see it, that it was like the prospect of telling the crowd that you couldn't do it was going to turn into like a thing.
Yeah.
And it's just this small suburb. Like they really weren't prepared to deal with this. So they're just like, okay, you can do this, but you have to pay the police detail. And by that point, I had enough money from the door to be able to pay them.
Yeah.
But I remember being near the end of that show, like counting the money in the bathroom, and it was like the stress of it, of like cops yelling at me, and I was like scared. There was like fights in outside the show and stuff like this, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, my hand was shaking. Like I was counting money, and I was like, holy shit, my hands are shaking, like in the bathroom. Because I was just like, oh my God. It was like, so it's like good that I didn't do that in Foxborough, I guess, because I would have lost that venue.
Yeah. Like
But they didn't let us.
I've known John and Lex since they were like real young. They were in a band called Cast Off Skin that I saw way
I kind of remember that name.
and
Yep.
and then I used to be real good friends with a band called Ukla the Mock from New Hampshire that was kind of like a metalcore-ish
Yep.
band. I like helped them do a lot of stuff with like flyers. I did almost like all their flyers back in the day, and Lex was like really influenced by Ukla the Mock. So like in the beginning when Ukla the Mock started playing, they used to beat the shit out of each other on stage. They'd kick each other and they hit each other with instruments, and like, it would be like totally crazy. And Lex Lex saw that crazy energy and kind of like got influenced to be like, he says it in interviews, he tried to step his game up and be like a little crazier when As the Sunsets first started.
Lex is just one of those people where he's like, just like, he just has a lot of charisma. Like he worked at like Newbury Comics or something around then. And, so a lot of people knew him. He's just like a likable, nice guy that everyone's like, oh shit, Lex's band's playing. That was like a lot of times when I would see kids that's how they were looking at As the Sunsets. They were just like, Lex's band was playing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's that dude's like stage performance, and stage, but it was like every band definitely played on the floor. I don't even think at that Plainville show, I don't even think there was a stage. It was just like a function hall, like
Yeah.
It was like a DJ would play, and the kids would have like a school dance with like these Jam and 94.5 hip hop type records playing. You know what I mean? Like that's usually what happened in that space. So it was like, it was just like something about it's true for a lot of bands. It's like whatever the band's performance is going to be, the audience is kind of taking their cues from it. Like they're like, oh, this is acceptable dance or behavior for this band. And it's like definitely true of Converge too. Like if Jake Bannon wasn't like going ape shit when his own band plays, he's kind of like the cheerleader for Converge. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, definitely.
It's like the vocals are like this total mess, especially depending on the era of Converge you're talking about.
Yeah,
Or it might be like, the show doesn't even have a good PA system or something or whatever, but it's just like this dude that knows all the like breakdowns and stuff like that that is going to go bananas for it.
yeah,
And like, yeah, I definitely felt that way about As the Sun Sets. It was like if Lex was just like fuck everything as soon as his band started playing, he didn't care if it's going to be like burning a bridge or getting them in trouble or
yeah.
something like that. He's just like he's going to do what he's going to do, and so that just would like inspire these random kids at the shows. Like we had a lot of shows. Like I knew the kids sometimes too, but it was just like they had it in them to do that, but they never really like caught the band that would be like that. And honestly, it was like most shows. There was some times when I had like that. I was telling you how I had that address book back then. Like it used to be in the big pants era. It was like in my back pocket all the time was this huge address book day planner thing, right? And it had everyone's numbers or whatever. Like, but I also would write down shows. Like after shows, I would like take all the flyers and copy them into it.
Yeah.
You know,
That's the
and
thing
like
that's the thing that I wish I did, because there's so many shows that I forgot that I went to and what bands played. I wish I did that. That would be like the
yeah, and I know I would write them down. Like occasionally, I wouldn't make it to one of the shows, but I would try. So there was some times when it's like I'm looking at it and I know which shows I went to, and it's like at, there's sometimes when it's like 14 days in a row I went to a show every day,
yeah, yeah,
and most of the bands where it was like the appeal for me was moshing.
yeah,
Like I didn't even that was the thing to me is like a lot of the times like Moment would play at Reflections in New Bedford and it'd be like the red chord, you know.
yeah,
It'd be like these bands that just like didn't sound like us at all, but it was something about that the style of guitar playing or something that we just like clicked with these bands. It was like the kind of friends we would make would be in much heavier bands than us all the time.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
and like personally, outside of being in a band, the shows I went to were all heavy bands. Like I almost, it's just, in fact, I remember that place where I met Steve Diaz at the Get Up Kids show. That in my mind, it was like somebody related to the Get Up Kids was in Coalesce, I think, or something like that, where I was like, oh yeah, and that was why I was going. Like I wasn't a huge Get Up Kids fan,
yeah,
but I just was like, oh yeah, like I went to shows all the time. There's a few people like that I remember too. I used to say that's like the real clique was these people who just like never went home. Like they'd be like, I'd see them at like the karate show or something like
yeah,
that. And then I'd also see them at, it'd be like the Trouble or something like that. And it's like
yeah,
the bands don't sound anything like each other,
yeah,
but I would just see them at every show. It was like, I don't know if you know from Boston, like Tom the Knife or someone like that. It's like I would just see them every single time. Like I don't even really know him, except that it would be like, I think the first time I talked to this guy, Tom, was like at Converge that I noticed the space in Worcester that he was like when Converge played, he was going so crazy that I was like, that dude's awesome. But then I also would see him at like these indie rock shows and stuff like that. So
yeah. That's the awesome
it's
thing
just
about back
so
then too. Like I said, there was so many, like back then when we're talking about, there was so many places to play shows. I mean, Espresso Bar, the Space in Worcester.
yeah,
Then you if you'd come up to New Hampshire, it would be like Cafe Savoy or Safe and Sound
yeah.
up in Rochester was like a big
Station
place up in
Sound.
New Hampshire.
I think I saw Cavity and ISIS and Converge at Safe and Sound. And this is the show when like, some this song by Converge that's called Color Me Blood Red.
Yes.
This like opening riff of that played and just like everybody went crazy. And this dude just jumped in the air and like kind of like spin kicked or something. And his shin hit me like, it was like ding, like right there. And like next thing I knew, I was like waking up and people are helping me up off the floor. You know what I mean? I was like, And I was like, no, I'm all right, right? And then, but I totally went to the bathroom and like threw up in the sink. I was just, that's not the only time either. There was another time. You know this show? I know you know the show. Is like There Were Wires, Catharsis,
Oh,
Converge. Fuck, who else played the show? I'm
um,
forgetting right now. As the Sun Sets
yes, yes,
and As
as
the
the
Sun
sun
Sets,
sets, yes,
right? And it was As the Sun Sets practice space actually,
yes.
because it was supposed to be at Fort Thunder, and but Fort Thunder had been doing so many shows. I think the police showed up and were like, "This isn't happening," right? And like so, last minute, As the Sun Sets, it's like we can do it at our space. Just come with us to our space. And so it was like this, like they had the dopest practice space, which is it's true at the time of Providence in general
Mm.
at the time, because like Olneyville just had these like barely anything for rent old mill houses and stuff like that
Yep.
that were just like these old factories and stuff. Yeah, shit. So, but you know, it was basically just like the like essentially the room. I don't even think that room had windows. It might have, but you can probably look because you can find this Converge DVD that's like the Long Road Home.
Yep. Yep.
That's like there's a couple like of the songs from that practice space live
Yeah,
in it, right?
I think it's on YouTube as well. I think
Yeah, so like I love that YouTube actually because it's like one of those things where it's like every single person that's in the video, I'm like I know them, so it's like really fun to me to watch. Like I've watched that video a million times, but it's like at that show at some point during Converge, I also threw up like just from heat, from overheating. Like I was moshing so hard and it was so much like body heat in that room that I just suddenly was like nauseous and dizzy, and I
yeah.
was like, I don't feel so good. And I was like walking and trying to find a bathroom in those hallways. It was probably like partly my fault of As the Sun Sets getting in trouble for that shit because they're like, we're running a show in a practice space that's like hundreds of people. Like
I know
I was one of the people that threw up in the hall.
that reminds me of a show like when I played in High School Sweethearts. We would always play Firestorm at the end, and like at the end of the set,
Yeah,
I was tired from screaming already, but then I would go batshit and do some like crazy moshing at the end. And I remember at Exit 23, I just like I drank a bunch of water, and then right at the end of like Firestorm, I puked all over the floor.
like just
It
throw up
was just because
water.
I was like so hot and it was like not dehydrated, but just like just my energy level was just like, and I just all of a sudden I was like, oh, I'm gonna throw up, and just
Yeah,
puked water everywhere.
it's also. I mean, that can happen if someone just ran 3 miles or something and pushed themselves too hard. But also, I think it's like your diaphragm from just like taking this big breath and then your diaphragm's like pushing as hard as you can. And like if you just get a little bit nauseous and then you start to throw up, all of a sudden it's like your diaphragm's like spasming. You can't,
Yeah.
it's like a bad thing. It's like, but I would never push myself that hard to exercise, honestly. Like I remember actually one time going to like a doctor, just for like a regular like doctor visit checkup, right? When I was probably like 22 or 23. And he was like asking me all these questions like, do you smoke? I'm like, no, I don't smoke. He's like, do you exercise regularly? And I'm like, this sounds really weird, but like I play in a band and I go to see other bands play all the time and it's like a lot of exercise. Like that was like it's like the hardest cardio workout for me because it's like, I'm like the good part of the song's coming up, or it'd be like I'm totally exhausted, but then it's like this next song, and I'm like, oh
Yeah,
shit,
yeah,
it's that song,
yeah.
and so it's like you're gonna push yourself so much harder, and it just became like in my head, it's like that almost like that feeling of like pushing myself a little bit too hard was actually just like that's the only thing that really was exercise. So if something was just kind of like a brisk walking at a brisk pace or something, I just that didn't even seem like I was pushing myself that hard. So even though I was never really big into organized sports, it was something about like it sounds so ridiculous, but it's something about moshing itself that I just like that just made me be in such good shape when I was younger.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I was just
No,
like,
same
if
here. I mean,
anything, I was underweight from this like insane cardio all the time.
yeah.
It's like,
I mean, I played sports a ton like in high school, and I was getting into moshing at that time. But I probably was like huge into moshing, probably from like '95 to I don't know, maybe like early 2000s. But I was going to Boston shows back in like the late '80s as well. So like, but I was like small because I was young, so
Yeah.
I was kind of just watching, and like I would get in the pit at the channel and the rat and stuff like that. But I was really really small, so like the bigger guys would, they thought it was funny that this small kid, the little teenage kid that was
Yeah.
like
Right.
13, was like in there. So it wasn't like I was giving it my all. I was just kind of just, they would be like, "Go hit that guy right there," and like I'd go hit him, and then the guy would like want to beat me up, and then all these big guys would come around him, and he'd be like, "All right, all right, all right." Like,
Yeah, honestly, I never, I remember I saw this band. I don't know if you remember this. Is called Reason Enough. Do
mm,
you remember this? That was my first ever hardcore show. Actually, a different venue in Foxborough, not the South Foxborough Community Center, but it's like a VFW hall.
yeah.
But it was like, you know, the other bands no one would ever hear of either.
What
But it's just Reason Enough was like the biggest band that was
did
there,
did
And I
did
was just
Brawl Park play that show? Because they were right like Reason Enough and Brawl Park. Remember Brawl Park?
I can't, yeah, I do remember Brawl Park, but I can't like guarantee they were playing that show. I can't remember, but I know one of the other bands was called ESPD, I remember, that had like the Jared Seabrook and Brandon Seabrook, who are like much more famous musicians in other genres now. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? But this was like the first time I saw, so, I kind of knew like, just like Anthrax or like some weirder shit that was like Stormtroopers of Death or something like that from Don Belcastro's older brother.
yeah,
So I kind of knew the concept of like a mosh show where I would be kind of scared to be there, but I never really had gone to a show for real yet.
yeah,
And I just remember these dudes that would be like kind of windmilling or whatever in the pit with like their brim of their hat down, like that. When you're saying
yeah,
Brawl Park, there
yep,
was sort of, or, just in general, kind of this like New England or Boston area is like kind of like sports themed hardcore.
yeah,
It's like the weirdest shit.
yeah.
It's like 10-yard fight. Or like, yeah,
Slap shot.
it's like, yeah, it's Slapshot still plays shows now. It's like, but it was just like these dudes that were just clearly like, I know, I remember thinking that too. Maybe it's like because my dad was pushing me to like cut my hair when I was younger, but it's also like whatever I was seeing on MTV, I was kind of like, yeah, I'm feeling, David Lee Roth or something like that, but I really didn't like that look.
Yeah,
Like I just saw it as like I was like, I don't know, man. Like I don't dress like that. Like no one I know really dresses like in like the spandex, like this kind of like ridiculous hair metal look, right? But I didn't really know any underground shit as much as like what they looked like, because it would be like a cassette sometimes that just had like artwork on it.
yeah,
Like I didn't know what like Sepultura looked like.
yeah.
I just knew that the tape had this like sick artwork on it. So like I was when I saw Reason Enough, I saw kids that like had like a flat top or something like that were just moshing. They just had like a fade or like wearing baseball hats and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, this is like actual normal people. And it wasn't what I thought. And so I wanted to mosh, but I was actually like really didn't mosh at that show. I remember watching people and just being like, holy shit. And I like just saw the possibility. But even that was like a suburbs kind of like lesser known. All the bands were kind of like fast hardcore.
Yeah.
Was like much more like underground thing for me. And when I first went to the Rat, it was like a matinee with like Scissor Fight and Dead Guy and Converge. I believe Dead Guy might have not shown up too, which happened a lot more before the internet really took off.
Yeah.
A lot of times it'd be like the day of the show, they had,
Yeah.
but it was like when I saw Converge play for the first time, I just saw the possibility. It was like I saw people mosh where there was like a mosh pit where it was like, don't go near that guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I never saw where like the entire room just went apeshit like that. So
Yeah.
I believe one time I was like, Don had shown me like Cave In 7 inch. which had Flypaper on it. You know this Kevin song,
Yep.
Flypaper?
Yep.
That's like, and so he was like, we got to see this band. This is so good. And so we drove for like, we drove from Providence, not Providence, but like UMass Dartmouth,
Yeah.
right? And all the way to like north of Boston somewhere. I forget the venue, but it was like, Merrimack Valley hardcore days.
Yep. Yep.
So it was like way up there somewhere. And then, but we were totally there just to see Cave-In. We had no, like, and we only knew like two Cave-In songs or one Cave-In song or something, It was like, um, and then I saw this band setting up and they were like, this is our 1 year anniversary. And it was Bane.
Oh no.
That's like the first time I saw Bane. So that was another band where it was like their 1 year anniversary, yet every single person in the whole place knew every Bane
Yeah.
song
Yeah.
and was like going bananas. I was like, what is this band? It's like I never really saw where people moshed as hard as that scene. And that's like sharing members with Converge too at the time.
Yeah.
So that's like it's like that scene just had like the most like out of control moshing where I was
Yeah.
like,
The
that's what I want. That's what I want to do.
the Merrimack Valley hardcore scene was crazy. It was. Do you remember if it was the place called the Red Barn in Andover, Massachusetts, that you saw Cave-In and Bane?
It might have been, but I really, you know what, Don Belcastro would probably know,
Mm.
but I can't rightly say. Like as I definitely remember like at the time we would do that, but that's the thing. Like Don and I, we used to be like, before we had girlfriends or something like that, we used to be like on a Friday night we'd like watch like Star Trek: The Next Generation and X Files and play Dungeons and Dragons and shit, right?
Yep.
And so we just hung out all the time anyway. So it was like no big deal at all for Don and I to like go on like a 2 hour drive to see some band. Because we would just drive around. Back then, dude, gas was cheap, life was different. We would just be like, we'd listen to the Melvins and be like, let's just drive around. We weren't even doing anything. We'd just drive around the suburbs listening to the Melvins. It's like that would be like a fun thing for us to do back then. So
Yeah.
for us, it's like, oh, we might drive around all night anyway. So driving like way out of our way just to go see like Reversal of Man or something. We're like, holy shit, we have to see Reversal of Man.
Yeah.
You know,
I was. I
we're
was.
like,
I mean, I was in
that
the same.
band we
I
heard
was
on
in
a
the same
7-inch,
boat.
we got to see them live.
Being in New Hampshire, like it's far. It's further than anywhere. You know what I mean? Especially the suburbs up here. And we would drive. It didn't matter where. We'd go all the way up to Maine. We'd go to Vermont. We'd drive down
Yeah,
to Rhode Island. We'd go. I went to so many shows
yeah,
in Connecticut. I mean, Waterbury, Connecticut, from where I live, is like it's like close to 4 hours. I mean, we're talking like 3 hours and 45 minutes. And I would do it on a
yeah.
work night. I would drive down there on a work night. I'd get home at like 3:30 in the
Hmm.
morning. I'd have to wake up at 5:30 and go to work. But I do it
Oh,
all the
yeah,
time. Me and my boys would do it all the time. It was crazy.
all the time. I would be like into bands and have like a girlfriend, and then I'd have like a 9 to 5 office job, and then also be like picking up hours at like a catering company and stuff. Like I have no idea how I had time for all of that shit. But I would also be going to shows all the time, and I would just be like, I remember a lot of times actually with Moment, they had a couch in the practice space, and I would be like asleep on the couch. Like I was like, until there's certain things where it's like until we got the song like ironed out, I wasn't really singing every
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
Especially, I wasn't, really properly trained or anything. So especially in the beginning, nowadays I kind of know more why, but it's like if I wasn't in shape, like if my diaphragm wasn't in shape, I wouldn't be able to hold a note for as long. And so I would start to like kind of tense up my vocal cords to try to like let less air out
yeah,
to make the note, right? And I didn't realize I was doing this. So, but I was like, if I would, it was kind of like a working out thing also, where it was like, if the practice is going to be 4 hours, one Moment actually played a show, it would be like, including setting up and breaking down, we'd play for like half an hour,
yeah,
you know? That would actually be how we get on some shows sometimes, because we'd be like, if you just let us open, we'll be like a half hour, like on and off stage. We're just going to play like, our songs are like 2 minutes long.
yeah.
We're going to play 10 of them and we'll be out of it, right? That was like what we were pitching ourselves to promoters sometimes. And it's like, so like the actual practice though was like, playing the same song 5 times in a row or something to try to work out a part
Yeah,
and
yeah,
stuff like that. I wasn't always singing. I'd be like sitting on the couch with a notebook or whatever,
yeah,
and I just like, which is really normal for like screamo or hardcore.
yeah,
It's like
definitely. I went through the same
the
thing.
singer's not always like,
I went,
but it's like on the other hand, if you didn't play along with the band, you definitely weren't in shape to play a show. Or like what Moment would end up doing a lot of times is like back to back shows.
yeah,
Be like, we drive to one show, play, and be like, thanks, and then like
yeah,
leave and go
got
to
to
another
another
show.
show. Yeah,
Right. So it's like, like being able to play a couple times, I had to be in shape. So I actually did sing all the time at the practices, but sometimes it would just become ridiculous. It's like after an hour of singing straight, I was like, I'm just burning my voice
yeah,
out now, and it's not like for any purpose.
yeah,
And so I'd be sitting on the couch, and it's like more. It was pretty common actually for me to like fall asleep completely. It was like we would go to the practice like without fail, but it was like especially early on in Moment, I was like pushing myself so hard. I'd be like just like schedule wise pushing myself. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah, definitely.
I was always like I was like I got to see this band play, and then I would be like same. I also have like said this a lot of times. It used to be like we'd meet up with like the vegan kids to be like we're getting dinner at like 6 o'clock or something, and then we're gonna go to the all ages show, and then after that, there would be the more like 18 plus, like in Boston or Providence,
Yeah,
like Lupo or something like that. It's like there'd be one of those shows that's like they check your ID to get
yeah,
in, but
yeah,
it's a rock show. And then there would be like these places where it's like the nightclub where there would be like you know any kind of nightclub where they're playing like weirder underground records. If it was like the goth night at this thing or like there's like if they allowed us to go in with sneakers, then then we would go to a nightclub. And then there's a lot of times, like I said, I'm the kind of person I just like wouldn't necessarily go to sleep anyway.
yeah,
And I knew a lot of people who were like straight edge and would end up hanging out with the club kids because you're like not drinking, so you can last.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
So they were all kind of like taking drugs and staying awake, but I would just be like hanging out. It's like so after the dance night stuff, in Boston, everything has to close at 2.
Yeah,
So then there'd be like this after hours, like weird at someone's house playing records type of shit going
yeah.
on. So even if there wasn't a band playing, sometimes I was just never going to sleep. So
I
I don't
have
know how I was doing
I
that.
have a funny story about Moment. I like the kids up here. I was so into songs for the self-destructive that like I played that shit so many times, and like my friends were like, "Oh, we like Moment," and my friend me and Dub, like literally at work, we must have played that shit over and over again for about a year straight, every day, like over and over again, and like to the point where my friends were like, "Dude, I don't even like Moment anymore because you guys ruined it.
I know.
You ruined it for us." Because we loved it so much. Like me and this kid Dub were just like
I'm like,
literally telling you for like two
dude,
years
I'm
straight.
100% sure that I've done that with Converge to like many of my friends. Like at first they're like, yeah, it's pretty good. Like they actually, they have some overlapping taste in some way. But then after a while, they're like, dude, no more Converge, man. It's like,
And also my friends are always like, hey, do you know, like they always asked about the bass player in Moment. They were like, oh, did you like what's up with the Mad Russian? Like they'd call him the Mad Russian.
dude, I hang out with him sometimes. Actually, he's up in like upstate New York at this like weird gig that he has where he's a bartender.
Oh, no kidding.
But yeah, they have events and functions sometimes. So it was like, this thing, it was like crazy. Like it was like $30 an hour um for like a wedding where there's like multiple functions that whole weekend.
Yeah.
And then plus it was like they gave me an apartment for the weekend,
Oh, no kidding.
you know? So I was like, so I went there and hung out with him, and like he's one of those people where I can just like step right back into it with
Oh
him.
yeah,
Like we
definitely.
text all the time, like just joking around. But then like when we see each other in person, it's like as if we just were hanging out yesterday.
Yeah.
You know,
And that's the
I just
beauty of
for whatever reason, he's been like one of my longest running. Like just I get along with him all the time.
yeah, that's amazing. Those are the friends that it's it. like you said, just picking up where you left off, even if it was 10 years or even longer. It's I love those kind of friendships. That those are the best things.
Yeah. I mean, there's something about like that with Dennis where we just um I don't know, it's weird. It's like on the one hand, we have sort of like a pessimistic outlook, but on the other hand, it's like funny to us. And so like I have a lot of this is actually like really the tie that binds for me with a lot of my online friends nowadays too, which is like it's like we're saying things as if we're really depressed, but for some reason it's like funny to us, which I find, that's the thing too. I'd be like, it's like a lot of the music I liked or the things I was into were like that too, because it's like if you look around the room, it's like cool, we're all gonna sing this song together that's about suicide or something like this, right? And it's like that's the thing we have in common, and these are my friends that I see all the
Yeah,
time, right? So that seems totally normal to me. But if you go a little bit outside that circle, it's not always like as well
yeah,
received. And
yeah,
for some reason, Dennis, like me and Dennis, have like the version of that attitude that clicks the best for me.
yeah,
Like a lot of the people in other bands and stuff like that that were my roommates over the years, it's like there's something about it's like where I mean, especially because of the time period where you were going to shows like in the beginning, that kind of like positive hardcore aspect, and there's something about that that's like not quite for me.
yeah,
Like it's like it has to have something. That's when I was really like the perfect mesh of that kind of like fast hardcore, kind of jockier sound,
yeah,
and the like really negative screamo is American Nightmare,
yeah,
which is like near the end of Moment. American Nightmare had just come out. That was like a new band,
yeah.
and I remember like outside of shows and stuff like that with that dude Wes.
Mm.
And I was just like, he's one of those people too, where I was like, yes, that guy understands. You know what I mean?
Yes.
it's like it's like so fun, and I want to be at those shows so much, but also it's like the thing that I had in common with a lot of the people is this sort of like depression and negative attitude, and it's like American Nightmare is so good for that because it's like capturing this sound that was so popular in Boston at the time. That was kind of this jockey, hardcore, positive hardcore attitude, but just being like as negative as possible was just like really clicked with me.
Yeah, yeah. I've known Wes like when he was like a real young kid up in New Hampshire. He used to be in a band called
Really?
Behavior, which was like a pretty heavy
Hmm.
metalcore band. And like he would be in the pit all the time up in New Hampshire, and like Wes used to
Yeah.
really like rip it up in the pit and stuff like that. But I'll send you. I have a couple videos of Javier way back in the day, and I'll tag
Yeah,
you.
I want to
I'll
see
tag
that
you in it
definitely.
so you can see it.
Hmm. Yeah, that'd be dope.
Um, so when the discography for Moment came out on Tor Johnson Records, what was your thoughts on that? I mean, it had been a while, 2016,
Oh man,
and I
I don't even like know like I don't even know because like really just Paul from Tor Johnson was just like talking to us pretty much over like Facebook Messenger. Like I really don't even know what that entire plan was. Like I know Matt and Tom from Moment probably like handled aspects of that, but I just really don't like keep in touch with them as much as I was like even immediately after the band we just kind of like lost touch,
yeah,
but I talk to them sometimes, but like it's just like, hey, how have you been? Cool. But like I don't even know honestly. Like Paul told me they want to do that, and I was like, okay, I don't know how many of those you would sell, but if you want to do that, go ahead, man.
yeah, yeah,
Like I gave them like permission, but beyond that I don't even know.
yeah,
And I know Dennis is pretty much has that attitude too. Like it's like, oh, that's really cool. Like I'm glad that I have that band did on vinyl, like like a couple copies of it on vinyl downstairs right now,
yeah,
you know.
yeah,
But it's like that's really cool for me. But beyond that, I haven't like followed it or anything. And I told them, like I told Paul, I was like, dude, there's zero chance we're gonna play shows and promote this.
yeah, yeah.
So if you want to put out the discography, go
Yeah.
ahead. But that is just like nostalgia. It's not really like possible to play shows. Like with Steve Diaz, like the way things ended with me and Steve Diaz, like I don't even know where he is.
Yeah.
To we weren't able to locate him to ask him if if he's okay with us putting a discography out. Like
Oh, no kidding.
between all of us, we were yeah, we couldn't track him down. So we like contacted his brother and stuff like that, and they're like, "Where's Steve Diaz at these days?" But I don't know, man. He just like
Yeah.
he's a really weird dude. That's like the dude that got that like first told me, "Hey, you should play in this band," but like after Moment and Switches, then I just like totally lost touch with him. Like I have
Yeah.
no idea.
Yeah. So how long did like between Moment and Switches, was that kind of just like right after Moment ended, Switches began?
Yeah, it was like essentially, I mean, it was like probably bad feelings at the time, but essentially, like, Moment, it was like, there was a certain point where it was like, I would have rather, like, just gone on tour and kind of just, like, live in a van and, and play as many shows as possible. And Tom for Moment was, like, pretty straightforwardly saying, like, he's like, dude, I don't mind just playing shows locally
Yeah.
and, like, touring a month or so here and there. And I was like, I don't know if I can do it because I just felt like it was like not pushing ourselves as hard. So like basically I didn't believe in it. Like the plan that Tom was outlining, I didn't believe in it. I felt like I was like, well, a lot of time will pass. We'll be working on this thing that we don't actually like, it doesn't, we don't get to do it as often as we can,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? So so we disagreed about it, and I said essentially that ended. But Steve and Dennis definitely agreed with me. Like they were like, yeah, that's how I feel too. They pretty much had like nothing else. Like it was pretty obvious too. It was like if we went on tour, Matt and Tom were like, calling their girlfriends all the time, and Dennis and Steve and I were just like, we're on tour.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
Like I was like, the
Exactly.
thing we're doing, we're just like awesome. So like they were like Matt and Tom were kind of like asking a boss for permission to go on vacation
Yeah.
days to do the tour.
Yeah.
And we were just like, as long as I can remember, I would be doing that. Like the first show I ever played, I was like, quit my job to play the show. Like I forgot to ask for the day off,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh shit. And the boss was like, if you don't show up to work on this Friday, and I was like, all right,
Yeah. You're like, well,
I'm
I'm
playing the
playing the
show.
show.
I wasn't like when it came to like you know like running the behind the scenes of the band, I was really responsible and like showed up on time. But when it came to like most other shit, I was like not all there and lack of sleep.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but it was like, so Steve and I actually in a lot of ways click. In fact, a lot of things that I kind of like don't like or didn't like at the time about Steve is actually real similar to what I was up to or Dennis was up to. Because it's like, okay, it's starting to be like, this band's not really gonna play as like your full time thing. So what else are you doing? And we were like, what else am I doing? Like all I've done for like a decade or more is like go to shows. Like I don't know what I'm gonna do, right?
Yeah.
So I was kind of a mess too. And then Steve was just like, picked me up in the car and was like, check out these riffs I wrote. And so we're like, okay, we're gonna play in this band. And that was a lot more like of a mess, honestly, than Moment. It's like musically I really like Switches, but the practices and where like finding drummers and stuff like that. It was like Barry Marino is such a good drummer, but he's also like a really big pot smoker, and it was just not very similar at all to how Moment's work ethic
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
Like it was just like,
Now,
it's
can
like if I tried to push harder, there's some people where they're just like, that's being uncool. It's not like,
yeah.
it's like they're like, I'm a musician, man. Why are you being uncool? And they're like smoking a joint. So like I'm just too high strung or something
Yeah.
for Barry. But I love Barry. But it's like he was in my first band ever.
Yeah.
And he's been in some really cool bands. But it's just like it's just Switches was like a total mess the entire time.
Now with
And
switches, now is there anything that like I can't find anything online to listen to Switches.
I'm the worst
I had
at
the
that too. Like I don't even have. I did too. Multiple times I would like ask people like, "Oh, send me those tracks.
yeah
You have them?" And then I still lose them. I don't really save like a playlist or anything like even digitally. So I don't know. Like I know there's those on the like New England Music Archive. There's those two songs,
yeah
and even those are like not like at a certain point, Steve Diaz and Ryan Z became like Ryan Z was in the Young Idea at the
yeah
time, and they lived together, and they just became like constantly hanging out. They were like drinking buddies like all day, every day, right? And so it was just kind of like all of a sudden Ryan Z is our second guitar player,
yeah
and so we even re-recorded stuff with the second guitar, and that's what's on the New England Music Archive.
yeah
And I love Ryan Z's guitar playing on it, and we wrote songs with Ryan Z too after that point.
yeah
But there's earlier versions of those tracks that I like the mix on without Ryan on them,
yeah
just as an alternate thing to listen
yeah
to, and I can't find those. I can't find like any of the Switches stuff actually. Like
yeah. Because
it's
I was searching for it, and because I used to have it, and then I lost it. And then also with In Public too, I had those songs too, and I now I can't find those either. So
Pat O'Day from In Public and My Magnificent Machine. He absolutely has In Public. Like he's the kind like I know him, and he just catalogs things and keeps track of it like 100%. So like the if he lost something of In Public, I would be very surprised because there was just like it was all digital anyway. That was the first band I was in where we recorded digitally.
yeah
So it was always like a file on his computer, and he's not the type of dude to like lose that.
yeah
But I don't actually know. But In Public is like I can find everything In Public did for you.
yeah.
I'm sure.
That would be awesome. Yeah, I mean, even if he slapped it up on like YouTube,
Like
or even you just send me the MP3s, because I'd love to hear that stuff again.
yeah, like Eric Lipson, who's in this band, Late Night Wars. I don't know if you know this band, but they're like that dude at one point emailed me everything Switches had.
Oh, no kidding.
Like he had all of it. I'll get you his email address or something, or I'll find him on Facebook. But like he basically like sent it all to me, and that whatever that email account is, I really didn't use that much for a
Yeah,
while, and I went back and looked for it, and it's like not in that email. I don't know what I did with
yeah,
it or something. And I asked Eric Lipson for it, and he didn't have it. He was like, I don't know if he didn't have it anymore or he didn't like get back to me about it.
yeah,
But I remember asking Eric for it again, and he was just kind of like, "What are you, a weirdo? I already sent it to you." So it's like, I don't know. I should probably look it up, but it's one of those things. It's like just because of like, you know, like Dennis was really like just totally different lifestyle after Moment broke up.
yeah,
So like I didn't even know where he was, or couldn't always get in touch with him for a while. Now I'm in really good touch with him, but like, and then Steve was sort of like even near the end of Moment when it was like the writing was on the wall and it was not going well. Steve and I like broke edge and were just kind of a mess. So
yeah,
my not like for being a person who never really smoked pot and all of a sudden like smoking pot and drinking and stuff,
yeah,
I was like my memory's hazy from that time. I don't know exactly like what all of those recordings. I don't know where they live. You know what I mean?
yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised if Steve Diaz has them, but he didn't like. I'm not in touch with them at all.
yeah,
Like Steve Diaz really like. To be honest, it's just some stuff like I wouldn't want to like blow up someone's spot or like outright talk trash about anyone, but it's like Steve all through Moment even was very much into like shoplifting and crime in general. Like he appeared to have like no job sometimes and was just straight up living off crime.
yeah,
But like which I found actually to be this was really common for like a certain type of straight edge because it's like I oftentimes had this feeling like I'd look around at like a house party in Boston where it's just all these like drunk college idiot type people
yeah,
and I just like there'd be like the other two straight edge guys, and we're like the only people who even are like coherent. So it's very easy to like kind of like pull scams on
Yeah.
people or something. So it's like, and Dennis was definitely not straight edge at all. So like,
Yeah.
there was a couple times Dennis and I would be like, think of some scheme, and it's like, even though I would be like, so like crime for me was like a prank
Mm.
sort of,
Yeah.
and I was very easily like I was sure that I wouldn't get caught for certain types of things because I was like, I'm the only one who's even paying attention. And then Dennis was just out of like insanity, was like down to do whatever.
Yeah.
He's like a drive the getaway car type guy.
Yeah.
So like he doesn't really care. But it was like, so there's something about it where like Dennis and I are very sociable and like really didn't we were able to like recognize what's appropriate.
Yeah.
Even though I mean I guess crime's never appropriate,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
shouldn't be doing this shit. But there's just some stuff where it's just kind of like burning a bridge or crossing the line or like taking way too big of a risk. But like Steve Diaz really like just once he broke edge a little bit, he just could not see where the line was, honestly.
Yeah.
So it's there's just too many times where it's just like obvious that like friends of ours had amps stolen or like just equipment houses broken into or something, and it was like really obviously leading back to Steve too often.
Yeah.
But I can't really honestly say sometimes though, because like you never know when people are trying to like hide their tracks with crime. You never actually know sometimes if certain people did it, but it's like
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Exactly.
But I'm not like it's not like I had evidence and was like trying to get them caught. But there's sometimes when I was just sure. It was just so obvious, like who would do this type of thing, you know.
Yeah. Now,
Like
are you living in New York now, or are you back in New England now?
I've been in Foxborough since like right shortly before the pandemic. Like I was like here with my daughter, which was sort of like she had like a break from school. So I was here with my daughter, and then I remember at one point we were gonna go back to New York, and her mom was sort of like, for the it was like because of the weekends, it was like 10 days or something that my daughter was in Foxborough with me,
Yeah.
and her mom was sort of like, just alone in the apartment when the news was really bad in the beginning of the pandemic, and she's sort of like doom scrolling through Facebook, and she was like really not. It didn't seem healthy to just hang out in your apartment and be like out of your mind. And so by the time I was supposed to be bringing Isabel back to New York, but by the time we got there, we like talked her mom into coming back to Foxborough.
Yeah.
So, and then we were here like, they were here like 4 or 5 months, 4 months,
Yeah.
a little bit more. Which that was weird for me because it was actually great. Like in New York, it's like, even the New York is so big that it's like, it actually took me, a little over an hour sometimes to get to their apartment.
Yeah.
And I have, I'm on really good terms with Isabel's mom where I could be like, go over there for like a couple days and like crash at their place and then go back to my place in Brooklyn. It's like,
Yeah.
so I was seeing Isabel, but, like, like 2 or 3 days at a time and with 2 or 3 days not seeing them and just working and stuff like that. Like New York is really expensive, but like Boston's really expensive too.
Yeah.
So I didn't really see it as that different of a lifestyle, but it's, it was just like all of the sudden where like all five of us were in this house. And I don't know, man. I'm just like compared to back in the day to now, it's like my relationship with my parents is so different
Yeah.
and so much better.
Yeah.
So like I like living in Foxborough, but because of the pandemic, like Isabel goes to a school where like her mom also works at the school, and so they have, you know, they're really in like they don't even fully go to school nowadays. Like a lot of kids are in this boat where they're just remote learning, and you know, but sometimes they do go to
Yeah.
school, and then it's like
It's like a hybrid
um,
type of thing.
it's yeah, and it's just I don't know. So but like we kind of realized shortly before the holidays that we can't really like do the plans the way we were even talking because going back and forth to New York, it's like if if I'm gonna keep, you know, like New York just seemed like you can't. If I went to New York, unless I was gonna be like full time living with them, which is not realistic or possible really,
Yeah.
then how would I be seeing them? You'd have to constantly be like breaking quarantine and
Yeah.
stuff, and
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
traveling back and forth to New York's crazy because New York and Massachusetts both have these laws about how you're supposed to be handling traveling. And then my parents are older. They're not really like they were in one of the highest risk groups. So I just, next thing I know, I was like, I woke up and it's probably like 5 months or so since I saw my daughter.
Yeah.
So in person, like luckily the technology is so good nowadays that like we can be in as much touch as we want.
Yeah. Definitely.
Like I've always been kind of, even when I lived in New York and was seeing her like all the time, then it's like we're digitally in touch too,
Yeah.
you know? Like that's just the nature of reality now. So, but yeah, it's really like, that's really weird. It's just weird times that we live in. Like once everyone's vaccinated and stuff, we can start talking about changing the routine.
Yeah.
But
Definitely.
yeah, it's crazy.
Pete from Sinaloa just wrote. Pretty sure I once saw My Magnificent Machine show where you lit your shirt on fire.
Yeah. Oh yeah, when you were talking about, like Lex from As the Sun Sets just kind of like being inspired by like bands that like smashed each other on stage and stuff, it's like that's the thing with My Magnificent Machine was that kind of suburbs band from that exact same era. Like that show I was saying where As the Sun Sets played in Plainville, that's like My Magnificent Machine played that show too.
Yeah.
Like that's Pat from My Magnificent Machine is just love that kind of art, like of just he saw like putting himself in danger or pain to be like part of his performance basically. There were a couple of times when it was like a band was late for a show or something like that, and Pat just, as performance art, just went on stage and like smashed himself in the face with a microphone and stuff like that. Like he just was really into this. So he just had this plan one time where he's like, "We're playing this show. What is this place called?" I think it's like Al Barkley had this space that was in Providence, but I forget the name of this place right now. But it was like, fuck, I forget what it's called. But it was like, man, I saw so many bands there too, but I forget the name right now. But I'll remember it later. But it was like Pat he had just had this plan. He's like, when we play at this show, I want you to pour this rubbing alcohol all over my flannel shirt and light me on fire. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, I tested it out early today, and it's fine. I won't get hurt or anything. And I was like, okay. But
Yeah. Pete said Studio 159. Was that it?
yeah, yeah, definitely.
Um,
I
but
saw I saw 400 Years play there. I saw Converge play there. So I'm sure I saw so many of my friends' bands too. But I just like I remember somehow I had a demo of the dudes that were in Roswell. This is like way
yeah.
back Providence stuff, right? And they were in this band All Chrome. You remember All
Oh
Chrome?
yeah, I do. Yes, definitely.
Like they had like this cassette demo tape, and somehow I never actually saw All Chrome play. And I remember Studio 159. They were like, I was like, oh my god, All Chrome's playing, and I was like psyched about it. Like I probably went to like a dozen shows at that one location right
I
there.
think
Seriously.
I think I only saw one show there. I know I saw His Hero Is Gone in. You remember the place Safari Lounge in Providence?
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
really weird
Trying to
place.
think of
I saw His Hero Gone. I forget who else had played that show, and obviously I saw a shit ton of shows at the Living Room. And like way back in the day when I was younger, I saw a bunch of shows at Club Babyhead.
yeah. Club Hell, as it later became. Is that the same room?
Yeah, I think so.
The
Yeah.
same room.
Uh,
I saw Earth Crisis and Temperance at Club Babyhead.
oh, no kidding. No kidding.
Yeah, I forget who else played.
Um, I don't want to keep you too long. I know you're outside. You must be cold as shit. So usually at the end of
Yeah,
my
I forget.
talks, I just shoot some quick rapid fire questions at you. So I'll shoot a couple at you right
Okay.
now. Um, Favorite New England punk or hardcore band for you all time?
That's just easy for me because it's Converge.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like,
What was the first punk hardcore show you attended?
yep, that Reason Enough show. So
Um,
Reason Enough in EXPD, but I forget who else played, but
yeah.
I'll remember later, I bet.
All-time favorite punk hardcore show you played, like when you were in a band, or it could be a couple. Like, what was like the number one or two shows you guys played in any one of your bands that you played?
I don't know. I think when Adam Garcia set up Fuckfest at Reflections in New Bedford.
Yes.
So that was actually like pretty early on with Moment too. So that was like it was the first time where it was like one of the bigger crowds where I thought it was like a cool show.
Yeah.
A lot of the earlier Moment shows, it was just like opening for someone else, so we were like, oh, we're lucky to play this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that was one of the first times when I was just like, oh, all my friends saw my band play, and I had a good time. And then plus I saw like all of these other bands that day. It was like that was a great show for me.
Yeah, definitely. I was there on both days. I saw you guys play that first day, and then I brought my camera the second day. I haven't seen any other footage besides the footage that I did on the second day. I wish I brought my camera that first day, but I kind of just wanted to enjoy the show. And there's like a lot of people that think different bands played on that first day, but I remember you guys. There were Wires, Trillion Barnacolaps played, Books
Yep.
Lie played.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
I can't really remember the like two.
I'm pretty sure Usurp Synapse played that day too,
Oh,
but I
that
might be
because I
wrong.
know they played the second day because they
Oh, okay. See, I probably just went the second day too, so to me it's just like the same
the same
show,
day.
but
Yeah,
in my memory, I don't know.
yeah. But that was
Trying
a
to
really
remember.
really good show, and that was like when Trillion Barnacolaps was still kind of like a screamy band. They weren't really like they were just
Yeah,
transitioning into the electronic stuff like back then,
yeah,
and which is
yeah.
crazy
Becoming
because
a little more only though.
yeah, which is crazy because I think I don't know if I booked this show, but I know you guys played with a Trillion Barnacolaps in Haverhill, and I had booked a Trillion
Yeah.
Barnacolaps show, and I don't know if I booked the show with you guys and them, and there was I forget the other band that played, but I possibly could have I think set that show up in Haverhill.
I'm trying to remember who else played.
All I
Like,
remember is
okay,
all I remember is the
Moment played
Trillion
there with like Hot
Barnacolaps.
Cross.
Oh, was it that Hot Cross show?
I think so because I've Moment really didn't play Haverhill that many times. Is maybe like 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, yes.
So
I
I'm
don't know
pretty
if it was
sure
that Hot
the
Cross, but
when
I'm
the
thinking
Trillion
about it.
Barnacle apps, Hot Cross playing. But yeah.
All right, my next question. All-time favorite punk hardcore show you attended as like a person in the crowd watching?
Oh man. Is like Converge, Coalesce, Cave In,
Oh,
Unsane,
was that?
Nile, and
Yeah,
Neurosis
that was the Worcester,
at
the Worcester show.
St. John's
Yeah,
Gym.
St. John's Gym.
Yeah,
I was there. That
yeah.
was that was a great show.
Yeah, dude, I want like when like I was so sure I was going to that show, but it was like we're standing around with a bunch of guys, and we realized like there wasn't going to be room in the car, and we're like, no, we can figure this out. And I was like, I'll just ride in the trunk. But I actually, I had the like I was like in that circle of friends, I easily could have been like, I'm riding in the car, not in the trunk,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But I was just like to make peace. I was like, because we don't want to leave anyone behind. Like I'll just ride in the trunk; it'll be no problem. But
Jesus.
yeah, that was
I remember Coles only played like literally like 10 minutes at that show.
like, and I mean, Converge only played 4 songs. Well, at the time, that's a 25-minute set, but to play 4 Converge songs, but
Yeah.
Converge only played 4 songs, and it was like unlike all the other bands, they're like, "Can we have the lights on? Just turn the lights on," which totally made like the Converge set like way
Yeah.
different than all the other bands
Yeah.
too, which I like.
Definitely.
Mhm.
Um, I'm a big movie guy, so I don't know if you are,
Yeah,
but what was the last movie you watched?
the last one I watched was like with my girlfriend and my parents. Last night we watched Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Oh, nice, nice. That's a
We've
classic.
been doing that since lockdown. Like it's like, my girlfriend and I will just watch a movie with my parents at least once a week. Like we've been doing that for so long.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm like nonstop watching movies. Sadly to say,
Hmm.
my last movie was the new Coming to America with Eddie Murphy.
Oh yeah, is that good?
No, it wasn't that good. It definitely doesn't hold up to the original. That's for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
I showed the original to my daughter, which is kind of like, yeah, a lot of stuff. I wouldn't say that it doesn't age well, but it's like there's a lot of things that are just like from like my childhood, or like I don't know. There's just a lot of things from like '90s in the early 2000s that like when I show my daughter, she's just like, "What the fuck?" It's like not even reasonable that that was like a popular movie. But actually, Coming to America is like one of the more straightforward ones, and it isn't that weird.
yeah,
But there's some other Eddie Murphy shit, like The Golden Child or
yeah,
something. Like that's a really weird movie.
yeah.
Very strange.
Um, my next question: favorite all-time horror movie for you?
Just the Alien franchise with Sigourney Weaver. That's like the like, and honestly, I consider it only the trilogy of the first three movies, but like the rest of it, there's an Alien Resurrection was kind of like
Yeah, yeah,
B movie ish, but the first three are so good.
yeah,
Even though at the time I was very bummed out by the like negativity of Alien 3,
yeah,
but like it's so good. It's actually just like I wouldn't say that's a bad review of it either. It's a bum out of a movie,
yeah,
but that kind of makes it a really good series because of that, because it ends on a tragedy, unlike the original Star Wars trilogy where the tragedy is the middle one,
yeah,
so that they can have like a happy ending.
yeah, yeah.
But
Exactly.
like Alien doesn't really have the happy ending. It just kind of like sucks at the end, and you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Now,
Such a good series.
did you enjoy Prometheus and Covenant when that came out?
Didn't no, I mean I didn't even see Covenant yet, and I hated Prometheus. I mean, I'm just to me they had a whole cool mythology and like lore going on with Alien, and they just made it really like reach outside of what I thought about the alien. Like I just considered it an actual alien,
Yeah,
but Prometheus essentially makes it like it's not an alien. It's sort of like part of human history or like Earth's
yeah,
like history of life form. So it's weird. That kind of like it's kind of like retconning what the lore was,
yeah. But
to
I
me.
wonder if Ridley Scott had that in mind, like all the way through. You know what I mean? Since he was the one that did the originals, like I wonder
Even
if that was his
yeah,
main thought.
even if that's the case, I'm still like fuck that. Like death of the author, I don't care at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's that's that's fine. Like he should have taken into consideration like what the movie means to people or not. Or maybe he can just make Prometheus and I can just be like, I don't like that.
yeah, yeah,
But I don't even think like you shouldn't have made that movie or something. I'm just like, to me, because I don't like Alien Resurrection either.
yeah,
I don't, I don't hate it or something,
yeah,
but it's just kind of like this shitty comic booky version of something that was like, it was already like perfect to me.
yeah, yeah,
So I don't care. Like they're just making like kind of like this kind of like meta media that you can follow if you're a fan of those first three movies.
yeah,
So I don't mind it, but I'm just, yeah,
yeah.
I don't know. I don't like Alien Resurrection. This might have also influenced my thinking on it, but I like, for some reason, I was on a date with somebody where we could have seen, like, at the time, it was like this Jennifer Lawrence movie about being con men. I can't remember what it is right now.
I think I know.
It's
Yeah,
like Hustle or something like that. I forget what it is, right?
yeah,
And it was like she wanted to see that, and I was like, but this is like this Alien franchise movie. I want to see this. So I like talked her into seeing it, but then even I didn't like it.
yeah,
So it was like not only was she like, what the fuck? Why'd you make me watch that? But I was also like,
yeah.
yeah,
It
that
was
sucks.
like a
So
lose lose for you right that night.
yeah, like I was like all pumped and excited, and then I was like, I don't know. They just made too many. But it's if you just like didn't know anything about the Alien franchise, Prometheus is not a terrible movie. it's not like a poorly done movie or anything like that.
Yeah,
It's just only as like a fan of the Sigourney Weaver era
yeah,
was I like against it, you know. So
yeah. And my final question is, if you've been listening to hip hop at all, what have you been listening to for hip hop? And I don't know if you listen to hip hop, but if you are,
oh
what have
man,
you been listening to?
that's a weird one to me because at a certain point I just was like, I'm kind of like this with punk. I feel really different because I feel like guitar bass drums as a rock format is really dead. Like it's really hard to do and nowadays even,
Yeah,
and it's not like people don't really record analog anymore. But hip hop's gone through a lot of changes. Like even hip hop went from being like really sampled into like kind of like EDM,
yeah,
and everything's recorded digitally. But like you know, my girlfriend never really saw The Wire, so we're like watching The Wire right now. Actually, we're on season three,
yeah.
and I noticed season three is when we there was a noticeable like budget jump,
Mm,
and the things that are popular in it kind of remind me of back in the day because I remember being at a nightclub where they were playing like Misfits, and then it was like Ludacris Roll Out,
yeah,
and in The Wire season three, they're listening to like classic hip hop, which is like, you know, of course, all the '90s stuff. It just like I see the stuff you post a lot, and it's like, you know, it's like of course everyone remembers like the sort of backpacker era
yeah,
or like Wu-Tang Clan or something like that. But when it comes to like more modern stuff, it's like there's too many times it went like into some like I don't know. The internet just kind of flattened music where it's just like retro you can listen to the back in the day of any genre and you can imitate it really well too.
yeah, definitely.
So I really don't like bands from like the last 15 years that sound like the 90s
Yeah,
when so there's a lot of that like people would be like, you know, you like, you know, whatever, like most Def and Talib Kweli Black Star or something like that. So they're like, you would like this.
yeah,
And then they're showing you shit that I'm just is kind of like a, a rip off of something, but it's rubbing people a certain way, I guess, where they're like, they want to relive that.
yeah,
And then there's this other school of thought where it's kind of like, you know, around the time of like Migos or something like that, or like I'd say the last time I was like really pumped on a rapper was like Vince Staples or something like that, where I was
yeah,
like, oh, this is actually like doesn't sound like something I heard before, and I like it, you
yeah,
know. And then I don't really follow like that much like underground or current stuff like right now. So
yeah,
I noticed like alone in the car the other day, I just randomly got this like radio hit in my head that's like, you know, with like Future and Pharrell, and what is Pharrell's like cocaine rap side project?
Oh shit.
I
I know what you.
I saw Clips. But what is the dude from Clips? It's Pusha T
Yeah,
from
Pusha
Clips.
T.
Like they have this radio hit that's like y'all gotta move that dope. You know this? It's like Pusha's verse on it is awesome to me, and also Future's opening verse is awesome on it. Like, and I just randomly was like in the cars, like I couldn't decide what to listen to, and I just suddenly was like, yeah, remember that? And just that's the last time in the last week that I like voluntarily put on like anything that's not from when I was a kid,
Yeah.
you know?
Now,
So,
now, are you listening to any new like screamo type stuff or heavy stuff that's newer nowadays?
not, I really don't, every once in a while, there's like some people who like rub me the right way. And despite what I said about hip hop, which is a very different genre, you know, to me, but it's like, I actually do like sometimes when something just it doesn't have to sound like back in the day, but it has to like have this like certain aesthetic,
Yeah,
and a lot of bands don't. So like I don't know, like they're doing something that's maybe cool or heavy, but if it's not a certain quality, I'm not even trying to hear it. Like I can tell a heavy band, I can tell if I like it within like one song or so.
yeah,
I'm just like, I can see where they're going with this, you know?
yeah.
But there's a band that's that's called Your Fault with this dude Jeff Cheever that sings that is like randomly just on Instagram, I was like, oh, that dude's in a band, and I clicked on it, and like actually I couldn't. There's something about Instagram where I can't like always like click a link on it easily.
Yeah.
It's like Instagram really tries to keep you on the platform, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I just want to hear my friend's band, you know.
Yeah.
So I had to like look it up and find their Bandcamp or whatever, you know. I think it had a Spotify link, and I was like, I just want to hear the Bandcamp link, right? And so I tracked it down, and that was all. I listened to that in the car, like genuinely liked it and listened to it. So
Yeah.
that's within the last week too. So it's called Your Fault. Probably those dudes are still living in Austin, like right now, but that's where I know them from. But like, I don't really know anything else about it. In fact, I was like, I don't think I've ever known Jeff Cheever to be in a band. He's just like
Oh,
a
no
dude I
kidding.
know from.
No
He's
kidding.
friends with like Now Denial and like a lot of my friends.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, so I was just like, cool. But I like that was the first time in a while when I was like, oh shit, I'm gonna check this new band out, and I actually liked it. Because a lot, like, I don't want to like talk shit about anyone, but a lot of times it's like, oh, this dude from back in the days in a band, or this is like someone recommended this to me, and like it's like 90% of it, I'm just like, nah,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not usually like pumped. I'm actually like a hard audience, I guess. Like it's like the stuff I do like is very like weird and acquired taste, and then it's hard to make me like something.
Yeah. Jeez.
Like I remember back in the day, Cave In I didn't like. When I first heard Cave In, like the first Cave In record, Beyond Hypothermia,
Yeah.
like around that era,
Yeah.
like more than one person showed them to me before I was like, oh wait, I'm starting to see it now. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it's hard to make me like stuff even. So it takes like a really like it has to be like a really good first impression for me to just like something that I'm not even like related to the music.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I don't know anyone in it. I'm not going to see it live.
Yeah.
That's hard to make me like it anyway. So
Yeah.
yeah,
All right. Well, John, I've kept you on here for 2 hours. Like I said, you're outside. I feel bad. Um,
yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
I
Yeah,
want to thank you
we
so.
should talk again. That was really cool. I like
I
it.
want to thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to me. I haven't seen you in a very long time, and like you've always been a
Hmm.
cool person. Every time I've shot the shit with you at shows and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
likewise, man.
And I have insane respect for you, and I wish you nothing but the best this year. Hopefully, COVID like simmers down and people get vaccinated, and hopefully we see each other at some random show here and there. And
Yeah, man.
please stay in touch with me, man.
That's really cool what you're doing, man. I don't follow that many people on Instagram, and I really appreciate what you're doing, man. That's really cool.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Uh-huh.
All right, man. I'll let you get inside. Get some warmth on you, and I'll talk to you, and I'll definitely be in touch with you.
All right, later, man.
All right, John. Thank you. Bye.